People are wearing masks. It's like something from the 18th century where people are in costumes and they're in theater and they're performing. People are constantly performing. If you connect to it, if you know who you are, you know what you love, you know what you were meant to do, and it's not a cliche, it's actually very real. Look for the signs of things that excite you in a way that you can't even really control. Young people are dealing with a world that's so much more chaotic and confusing. Some of it has to do with the conditions of the world that we're living in, which is, as I said, much more chaotic than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Some of it has to do with the parenting issues, how differently they have been raised, and the culture that they're entering. And so because of that feeling kind of very lost and confused, the 48 Laws of Power kind of gives you sort of a grounding in kind of the dark, harsh aspect of life. Because I don't know, I'm not Gen Z, so it's hard for me to generalize. Of course, it's ridiculous to generalize. But a lot of them feel maybe they've been a little bit sheltered from that kind of harsh aspect of life. I know when I was 21, if I can remember back that far, I entered the work world out of college, and I was a liberal arts major, ancient Greek and Latin. You can't get any more irrelevant subject than that. My first job was real job, because I had many different jobs. My first real job was at Esquire magazine. I was the lowest editor there, an editorial assistant. It was like mind-blowing. I couldn't believe power games that were going on, because nothing in college prepared you for that. All the egos of the writers and the editors, the celebrity, the weirdness. I once edited an article by John Irving. He turned in a travel article about Vienna, because I was like the travel editor. It was such a bad article. It was like, go to this cafe, turn right, and then go here, and then turn left and go, it was like that. I edited totally, I made it like a narrative, and I got essentially fired because of that, or got demoted. I had outshone the master, law number one. So it was this rude awakening into this is what the world is really like. I had to school myself very quickly. And then with my 50 different jobs, I learned over time, this is how the world is. Young people are going through that, but times 10, because the world is even more confusing. They're not used to dealing with all of these egos, to all the political games. So I think, I can't say for sure, but I think these are some of the components that go into this revival of the book. It's selling 5 times more than it ever did 20 years ago. I'm not a cynical person at heart, I'm actually got, unfortunately, more of a romantic, naive streak in some weird way that comes out in the book.
It's interesting, you and I have met in person a few times now, and I imagine the image that people get from reading your books versus
how they see me,
how you actually are in person. Like, do you get people like assuming that you're like trying to pull puppet strings and manipulating them?
Yeah, like if I'm 5 minutes late for a meeting, it's not because of the traffic, it's because I'm playing some kind of weird game on them,
They're like, it's Law 27 or whatever.
I know, I've told this story before, but when I met 50 Cent for the first time before we ever thought of writing a book together, he was like, he later told me he was kind of a little bit intimidated by this. He expected an older man, he picked like Henry Kissinger to show up when we first met. And then he was kind of surprised, maybe even a little bit disappointed that I wasn't like that. Of course, I had the same impression about him. I was expecting someone really kind of mean and intimidating and thuggish, and he was the sweetest, gentlest, nicest person you could ever imagine. But yeah, people expect this, that everything I do is a power move, but it's not true. There's a theatrical element to the social world, which I embrace and I think is kind of fun and interesting, and is part of the 48 Laws of Power. So when you enter the world, you're not yourself. I think it's a mistake people make. They have no distance between their inner self and their public self. So they enter the work world, and people are different and weird and stuff, and they take it personally. And I try instructing people, it's not personal, it's a game. People are wearing masks. It's like something from the 18th century where people are in costumes and they're in theater and they're performing. People are constantly performing. Well, I'm performing as well. And so if people have this image of me as this dark, sinister figure, sometimes, I don't mind. I might lean into it a little bit. I might give that impression, because I kind of enjoy that. I kind of enjoy playing that role, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
but it's not really who I am. My story was fairly clear. I mean, like you, it goes up and down. It's never like a straight path. When I was very young, I loved writing. I believe I wrote something like a novel when I was about 9 years old, and it was about early humans first entering the scene, walking in the savannas of Africa. I'm 9 years old, and it's told from the point of view of a vulture who's watching them. No, I'm sure it's terrible. Really obsessed with vultures, and I did little sculptures of vultures. So you kind of see the dark side already there when I'm 9 years old. And so, I love words, just the sound of words, the sensuality of words, the weirdness of, I never took language at its face value. I thought there's something strange that we speak in words, that we have these symbols that we take for granted that we talk so smoothly, but they're not. They're weird. Little squiggles that mean something, that have a sound attached to them. As a child, I thought, this is really strange. I was obsessed with words. I played with words. I still do that to this day. I love like palindromes and word games and such. So words obsessed me, and obviously I wanted to be a writer. I thought when I was 18 in my drug days that I would be a wild novelist. That was my real dream. I still am kind of a failed novelist, so to speak. And so I tried, as I've told people before, I tried many different types of writing. I tried journalism. I hated it. I failed at it. It wasn't a good fit. I tried writing novels, bumming around Europe with a backpack. I failed at that. I came back to LA, tried to be a screenwriter. I failed at that. These weren't fits for me because I have a weird mind, and I'm also a control freak, and I didn't have any kind of control in Hollywood. And so, I lucked into the 48 Laws of Power by meeting this man in Italy. We were there to start a new media school for Benetton, some weird project like that. It was kind of a meaningless venture. It really was about being in Italy and having good pasta and espresso. And Joost and I, the man who did that, we kind of bonded over it. One day I'm in Venice, Italy, because it was near Venice, and we were walking. He said, do I have any ideas for a book? And the 48 Laws of Power just was almost like I vomited out of me. Mm-hmm. I kind of improvised. The gist of it, actually, I told him a story, the story that opens the book. I said, this is how I'd illustrate it. He said, that's fantastic. I'll pay you to live while you write the book, because I was very poor. And so I kind of found my way in this kind of circuitous manner to what I was really meant to do. But the lesson, I think, for people, because I get so many emails, people telling me, I don't know what my life's task is. I can't figure out what my purpose is. Can you help me? Can you help me? And there are signs. I believe everybody has signs. And these signs come out. A lot of them are negative signs, which you're not paying attention to. Things that you hate, things that frustrate you. So you're in music, it isn't quite working, you feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's not a fit.
Yeah.
So you make the wise decision that it's not for you to get out. Other people, they maybe feel that frustration, but they don't go there. They go, oh, I've already trained as a musician, I got to stick with it. They go, and then they burn out. They're 30 years old, and it's not working for them. They go, what's my life's purpose? I have no idea. You've got to listen to the signs. Sometimes the signs are physical. They're literally in your body. You literally feel frustrated. You literally feel like you're swimming against the tide. It's not working for you. You get up in the morning, you're not interested in this. So the negative is very important, but also there's the positive. So for me, the negative was I actually hate office politics, which is very ironic for me, who wrote that. I can't stand working for other people. And so I have to work for myself. I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to write books. I have to have control. But then there are the positive signs. There's the signs of things that you love, that you're passionate about. They generally show up when you're very 6, 7, 8 years old. And so I tell people, you've got to go through that process. You have to reconnect with the child inside of you, because children are dreamers. Every child thinks, I'm going to be president. I'm going to write a great novel. I'm going to do this, that, or the other. And then those dreams slowly get squeezed out of them.
Right.
But you have to return back to that. You have to have a little bit of that expansive quality, that little bit of imagination, even a little bit of naivete, and go back to who you were and go back to the things that excite you in a way that you can't even explain. I didn't give up. I didn't say, all right, my parents wanted me to go to law school, wanted me to settle down, wanted me to take these awful television jobs that I had, and I've had the worst television job you can imagine. I won't even say they want me to settle down, I had to have the persistence to go, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick with it. I have faith in myself, even though I got very depressed. But also sometimes persistence can be exactly the wrong thing. And the key to everything in life is knowing what you really truly love, what you were meant to do, why you were born, why you're a different individual. I know it sounds like a cliche, but everybody, your DNA is unique. There's never going to be another Mark Manson. The way your brain is wired, the way your parents raised you, your early experiences, you are unique. And so that is where your power lies. And connecting to that is the source of everything in this world. So if you connect to it, if you know who you are, you know what you love, you know what you were meant to do, and it's not a cliche, it's actually very real, then that persistence will become an actual positive thing in your life, because I can't keep kicking against a wall here. It's not what I was meant to do. I got to get out, So I was 25, 26 years old. I was in New York working in journalism. I had a meeting with an editor after I wrote an article. And I didn't know what the meeting was for. And he was kind of an alcoholic. And he basically said, Robert, you're not a good writer. You're not going to make it in this world. You need to go to business school. You're not disciplined. You're all over the place. You don't understand your audience. And so I could have said, fuck you. I could have stayed in journalism. I'd probably be dead by now. I'd probably be an alcoholic because it wasn't right. But I listened to it and I go, there's something true there. It isn't right. It isn't a good fit. I'm hitting against a wall. I got to get out and I got to try something else. But if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what marked you as a weird person when you were a child, then you're lost in life. You have no radar. When you love something, when you really are, when you have that connection like I'm talking about, then the practice, you enjoy it. You enjoy learning because you enjoy the process of getting better, and you can feel your brain kind of tingling and things are happening inside. And I tell people, if you have found the right path, if you are like an artist or creative and you feel frustrated and you feel blocked, that's a good thing, right? That little bit of pain, that little bit of frustration, it's often a signal that you're actually on the verge of turning into the right direction. It's a signal that things aren't quite working out and you're listening to it. But if you get anxious and you don't listen to the frustration, then you can't be creative. You can't go into it. But you'll learn at a much higher rate and you'll enjoy, because anything, as I said in Mastery, everything involves a degree of pain, a degree of practice, a degree of drudgery. There's nothing that's going to come easy in life. So anything skill that you're going to learn is going to involve that. And if you're not connected to it in a deep way like you weren't with music, you're never going to learn fast enough. And you're just going to you're going to burn out too early. So a lot of people, they only know the negative, only know, and then you kind of beat up on yourself, and then you start doubting yourself, and you think, well, maybe there's nothing that I'm really good at. Maybe I just need to go make a lot of money, which I'm not against making money. I'm not telling people to say, oh, I'm meant to be a poet, which you can't make a living off of. You have to be able to put food on the table if you're supporting a family, etc. So being able to make a living is important, right? But you don't have to compromise completely in that. So finding that positive element. Well, the first thing you have to do is it's a process. And people are so impatient. They are so unused to introspecting. And being able to introspect is a very, very powerful tool. And what that means is you have to be able to examine yourself. And in our culture, we're so outer directed. We're so directed towards what other people are doing, toward the social world, that the idea of who am I? What was I like as a child? What do I really love? Is alien to people. I can't understand that because I'm a very introspective person. But a lot of people have a hard time with that concept. And I encounter that when I try and counsel them. So I tell people, you have to be patient. It's not going to come in a light, it's not a flash of, wow, I was meant to be a sculptor. Here I go.
Right.
Okay. So you've got to be patient. You got to take a book and you have to make a journal. If that, I think it works for a lot of people. And you have to start going through this process. And I tell people, look for the signs of things that excite you in a way that you can't even really control. Because we live in a culture that is so damn rational. Everything is an algorithm. Everything is generated by data. But this is a feel. This is not data. This is a feel. This is an intuition. This is something that excites you in an intuitive way. And there's no algorithm in the world that I could invent or any genius could invent to help you find that. It's a feel. It's subtle. It's inside of you. But if you can't go inside of yourself, if you're so into looking into who you are, all the advice in the world will be useless. And I tell people that I can't help you unless you're willing to go through that process. And some of that examining is tough. Some of it is, yeah, I had a rough childhood. Yeah. I had these fantasies, but they weren't necessarily positive. You're going to come upon negative things, you know, and I had a lot of negative things in my childhood too. So you have to be willing to go through that digging. You're like an archaeologist with your own past. You're digging in there, looking for the signs, and they're there. When you were 5 years old, 4 years old, you were naturally excited by certain things. The other thing I tell people is we've got to get away from this idea of intelligence as just being intellectual. There's kind of a mathematical intelligence that has to do with patterns, often related to music. There's a social intelligence that has to do with dealing with people. There is kinetic intelligence, which is moving the body, right? Sports or dance or whatever. There's word intelligence. There's that kind. There's another one. I can't remember what it is. Imagery or something like that. Every brain has that natural inclination towards one of these intelligences.